Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. I'm Gordy Rush, my co-host Tim Johnson. And Tim, I'll tell you, a lot of people don't think of it as a business, but it is probably the biggest, one of the biggest businesses in the state of Louisiana. Excited to talk about LSU athletics today.
Well, exciting for both of us because not only do we get to talk to a leader of a very important economic driver in the greater Baton Rouge region, but he's also our friend, Verge Ausberry, Vice President, Director of Athletics, LSU. Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show, my friend.
Thanks, Tim and Gordy. Happy to be here today.
And we're glad you are. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there is a guy in college athletics on a better winning streak than you are right now. Right? It's been pretty big, and we're going to talk about some of those big wins and those big hires as we go along here. But, you know, one of the things that's always interesting to me is the day in the life, right? What is a day in the life of the athletic director at a major university like LSU? What's it like? What do you do?
You know, Tim, it really has changed over the years, changed in the last 5 years. It's, you have a plan when you walk in the door, and that day the plans change completely. It's been fast-paced. Lately, it's been a lot about, revenue, generating revenue, budgets, those type of things. But also, there's so many things that happen in our world dealing with the student athletes we have and the coaches and the staffs and the personnel, the people. So it covers all the aspects of business that you have to deal with on a daily basis. I'm supposed to have a meeting when I leave here with the SEC athletic directors, and that's a meeting I have to take. But after that, it flows in many different ways. And you just have to be able. Skip Bertman taught us that you have to be a utility player. Yeah. You can't just go in there now and say, okay, I'm the pitcher. You have to play shortstop a little bit. You have to play first base. You have to play outfield. You have to be the batter also. So that's pretty much the way of an athletic director today.
Well, it makes it not unlike any other leader of a major business anywhere, right? You just have to be prepared and ready to respond to whatever happens to you during the course of the day.
Correct. I call it it's a conglomerate, and I'm the head of the conglomerate, but every individual coach is a CEO of their company, and they let us know what they need to be successful. We have to provide the resources and help them get to that point, and that's what we do.
Okay.
Tim, fun part about having Verge here, we played together, so we've known each other a long time from New Iberia. And what I remember about Verge, we had some incredible football teams, some NFL players, but Verge was the leader of that defense. And, his leadership skills have always been fantastic. And, Verge, when I look back and we look back on your experience, our experience, what did you learn from all those years, football program, those great teams, those great coaches that you've taken with you to the C-suite as the athletic director?
Bill Ausberry had the aspect on my life and how we do things. And I think the thing is, doing your job and being good at your job and managing people and building relationships. That's the most important part of it. In today's world, you have to have the relationships. And no matter what you do in business or anything you do, you have to keep building those relationships. And you have to be willing to how you meet with different people. Because there's so many different diverse people that's coming at you at all times. You look at the athletic department, there's 500 athletes and 100 kids now, international kids in our program. Wow. Different coaches from different places, and how you make it all come together. You could bring in a lot of great people, but you have to mold those people into be the leaders that they need to be and help them get there where they need to be. You have to help the coaches get to where they need to be, the student athletes get to where they want to be and what they want to expect from the institution. And, I have to be the leader of the personnel in my executive team. How do you get the job done we need to do? I've restructured the department from where it used to be because I think now it's run more of a front office type office, and you have to have the resources that's coming in, especially with the NIL packages. How you help every coach get to what they need to have to be successful. So that's pretty much my job, the way I look at it, the leadership. I don't take all the credit. Like you said, there are many great players on the team, and you can't be out there, pointing and look at me. It's what's best for LSU.
Verge, you've been part of that athletic department for 30 plus years now. And if you go back to your playing days, obviously longer than that. So you've seen a lot as it has evolved over the years. But you've only been in the role as the director for 5 or 6 months now. Has anything surprised you?
One thing, I've had great bosses who've helped me get to where I'm at today, and they let me they let me make a lot of major decisions in the department, a lot of major search committees and things of that nature. One thing I learned, though, when you're sitting in the chair, it gets a little lonely. And now you used to have other people you meet with to make decisions. Now that decision really, they bring it to you, and you have to make the final decision on what direction you're going to take. So that's the only thing that you look at sometimes. You're sitting there like, okay, I'm in the chair now. What decisions do we have to make today? And you take a step back, Tim, and I have great faith that I put myself in. I pray on the decisions I make, but I also look at it like, Gordy just asked, the decisions we make. I make the decision on what's best for LSU. Not what's best for Verge Ausberry, not what's best for individual coach or a great athlete we have. What's the best for LSU? And you have to have great alignment when you do this. You have to have great alignment from, President Wade Roos, from the Board of Supervisors. We have to have great alignment. So we're making these decisions. It's not just an individual making it. We're making this, not making a decision in a vacuum. We're making this decision as, it's alignment. And the alignment part is what having us being successful over the last few months.
Well, if you think about that decision-making process and the kind of decisions you are now required to make, if you talked about your experience, we've talked about the number of years that you've been there. You've seen a lot. You've mentioned you've had great mentors over those years, and I think that all of that experience has had to prepare you to be in the position to make those decisions today.
It has. If I wouldn't have been, if they wouldn't have put me in the positions that I've been in. I came in the athletic department. I'll never forget my first job, and I tell this to young people. You have to be able to change in a minute notice. In my first job, I was over operations in the athletic department, and 9/11 happens that day, and I have no earthly idea what I'm doing. Operations, working with law enforcement. How you protect the stadium and 100,000 people coming to a game and how we're going to play the game, all of those different type of things. That was my first day on the job, and I had to adapt. And I tell young people, you can't go there and say, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is my job. It's how you adapt to what's happening in the environment that you're in.
And respond to it. Let's talk about LSU athletics as a business, because it is a business. And you mentioned that now. You're operating this like a front office. You're the CEO of a conglomerate. You've got all of these other major personalities and major leaders that you work with and are responsible for leading. $150 million plus budget.
250.
250 now.
Yes.
Not 5-6 years ago, right? 250 now. But billions of dollars of economic impact in the region, in the city, in the parish, in the state. Talk about the business aspect of LSU athletics.
It is a business, and it's a fine line we walk. It's a business, but then there's people you have to be helping also. And I never say let's not forget the student athletes and their part in here. But a few of them go pro, and a few of them talk about the big NIL deals. But really, we want them to graduate and have a degree and be successful citizens in our community. But yes, you have now it is a business. When you threw NIL in there, it became a major part of the business. When you talk about the salaries, with coaches that we bring in, and people always say they want to dismiss a coach. We have to realize that's a business decision you're making. Because not only buying that coach out that's not going to be here, but you have to also buy the new coaches you're bringing in. So when you talk about, okay, you just bought a coach out for $54 million, but you're not talking about the rest of the staff. It's not talking about the other staff that you had to buy those contracts out to get here. To bring Lane Kiffin in here, he had a $4 million buyout we had to pay. To bring Will Wade in here, there's a $4 million buyout we had to pay to North Carolina State. So just to get the coaches, there is a fee to it. So we're looking right now, there's so much uncertainty in our business right now, Tim, of how the new business model is going to look and what it's going to look like. And when you have so much uncertainty, you're making decisions while you're on the run, which is not good. But at the same time, we're going to be aggressive in that area and make the right decisions that we feel and try to stay ahead of it. Because, there's executive orders coming down. There's a lot of political bills that's coming to us that we have to make decisions on. But right now, there's nothing concrete of how this is supposed to look. And we're just trying to my staff, we're trying to just make it fit into what we think is going to look like and what the future is going to be and trying to stay ahead of it.
You teased a little bit the Coach Kiffin and then also Will Wade. And if you would take us through the whole business aspect of that, we know the fanfare side of it, but both a lot of similarities. I mean, clear number one targets for you, high profile. Obviously, Ole Miss, not a rival, a permanent opponent. I mean, I don't think it gets any trickier than that. Take us through the behind the scenes, the business aspect of how that all works.
When you're looking at Gordon, you're looking at, as I said earlier, when you look at the program at the beginning of the year, you don't look and go, okay, we're going to be firing this coach.
Yeah.
Okay, you want this coach to be successful, and you want him to win. Because if he wins, LSU wins. That's the way I look at it. But then you have to look at it as a whole. Like, you look at the programs, where are they? And football and basketball are our moneymakers. Mm-hmm. Those are our two sports that make a profit at LSU. So when you look at that, you have to take it as a whole, and the whole entity about. When I went there and I looked at the stadium that night, and I think you were there,
yes.
And I saw the stadium empty, and apathy was getting into the program. How we keep this program going. I always say, we don't get rid of people. The scoreboard does that. You look at the scoreboard at the end of the night, and it tells you pretty much how your program is going. I don't like to watch the players on the field and the players on the court. I like to watch the coaches, the staffs, the interaction. Could this person take it to the next level? Could it take us to the next level? In basketball, could the coach take us to the next level? And you have to answer those questions to yourself and to your staff, and you have to have, like I said, alignment with the president's office saying, look, I think we need to make a change to better the program, to better LSU. You expect LSU football to be at the top, LSU basketball to be in the NCAAs. Right. And what you want to do when we're doing these decisions is consistency in the programs. People like to say you win one year, you lose next year. You win one year, you lose next year. I like to see LSU build to a winning program and stay there. Right. So every year, we're talking about the top 10 teams in football, LSU is there. We're talking about the top teams in basketball, LSU is there. You're not going to win a national championship every year. It doesn't happen that way. Right. But LSU needs to be at the top. We're one of the biggest brands in the business right now. You look, we control the state. Mm-hmm. We're the only big show in the state. Georgia has that, and Ohio State has that, and that's where we need to be, consistently at one of those top programs in the business. It's hard. It's hard to make those decisions. Right. It's financial strain. And the thing that, that's why I readjusted the athletic department. We have to be out there, raising money, raising funds. Right now, I tell people LSU and LSU athletic department, we're a charity. Yeah. And so we out there right now and getting out there and going back to what Tim and I talked earlier about those relationships. We have to build relationships throughout this state and throughout our country, especially with the LSU fan base, and grow that brand that we have. And we're doing very well in corporate sponsorships. Clay Harris is doing a great job raising funds in that area. Matt Borman's doing a great job at TAF raising funds for us philanthropically. But that's the way we're going to have to do it. That's the new day and age. Public can't support us like they used to support us. I can't rely on the state of Louisiana and appropriations to help us. So it got to be private companies. It got to be private-public partnerships like we know at the arena, things of that nature. That's how we have to build things. That's how we have to move forward in this day and age.
We see 2 concerts in Tiger Stadium. It's new revenue buckets that have to come to help support.
Well, you talked about Lane Kiffin. You talk about Will Wade, two huge personalities in their respective sports, but you lead a coaching staff at LSU of big personalities, successful personalities. You think about Kim Mulkey, you think about Jay Johnson, you think about Jay Clark at gymnastics, Beth Torino in softball. What's the key? Verge, to dealing with those personalities on a daily basis? You talked about at the beginning flipping that organizational chart, right, and working in support of those great coaches, great CEOs in their individual sports. But we've joked about the fact that maybe we should start a reality television show about the coaches at LSU, because you got some great personalities there.
And don't forget coaches like Dennis Schaefer, guys who won national championships, the golf coaches, the tennis coaches. We have some good, beach volleyball coaches, Tanya Johnson volleyball. I look at it, we have a great group of coaches at LSU. Now, they all have strong personalities. Kim Mulkey, Jay Johnson, they're the best. And I've been fortunate enough to work with 3 of the best in the business ever. Nick Saban, Skip Bertman, and Kim Mulkey, the three of the best. And they teach you, and they taught me from my playing days with Coach Ausberry at LSU, with Nick Saban, with Skip Bertman, how you communicate with coaches, and you don't go there as, okay, I'm the boss. No, that doesn't work anymore. You go in there like, hey, coaches, I brought you in here. Now, what it takes to win. I was meeting with Jay Johnson yesterday about, NIL and rev sharing and those type of things. And I say, Jay, look, let us know what you need. I want to know what you need, because we're going to go out there. You go get the players, and we're going to make sure it works. And that's what we tell all our coaches. What does it take for you to be successful, to win? And nothing crazy. We've got to stay within a budget and a business model. But bottom line, what does it take to win? Does that new desk help you win? Or does this new machine help you win the quarterbacks?
Right.
Does this new pitching machine help you get better? Or do you need something with your uniforms? What is it that needs to win? And that's why I like to give the coaches, I'm not going to be babysitting the coaches. Those coaches, they know what to do and they know what success is. If they didn't, they wouldn't be at LSU. That's what I say when I hired Lane Kiffin. I don't go in there asking the coach what type of offense you're going to run. We sat down with Jay Johnson. That was the best interview ever. We talk about Kim Mulkey. It wasn't even no interview.
Yeah.
We talk about, LSU basketball. We talk about what one person could get LSU basketball, the crowds and the fan base excited. And that was Will Wade. There was no interview. It was probably, boom, that's the guy we wanted to get, and that's what you get. So all of those people know that, we're here to support them anyway. And they come here and they see what we're doing and how advanced we are in NIL, in rev sharing, in the brand, social media, the things that we do and we put out. They're like, wow, this is the best we've ever been around.
Well, and you mentioned that, and you are in a different environment today than we were when we were in school, or even 5 or 6 years ago. So you think about you think about NIL, you think about rev share, you think about the transfer portal, very different environment that you have to navigate today. And so for those who may not clearly understand when they hear all these terms, what they mean, talk about rev share as it relates to NIL and what we're doing for those student athletes as we go forward and what that's going to look like at LSU.
Rev share comes out of our budget. That's about $20+ million, and it goes up every year. And that's the portion where it came from the House settlement, where 80% went to football and 15% basketball and 5% women basketball. And what we did was 75% football, 15% men's basketball, 5% women's basketball, and about 5% to some of the other sports. And not all the sports are going to get rev share today. Some of them need more scholarships. So you have to pick and choose where we're going to be successful at. And we want to be successful at everything and winning everything, Tim, but you have to be careful. You only have so many dollars to go by. And then there's the third party. That's the NIL. That's the guys you see on the billboards, the advertising, that part there. And that's where you can put other money, but they have to have deliverables. What do they do for that? So you see commercials they own and different advertisements they own. That's what they do to get that money. That's part of the NIL portion of it. So you have to combine that together. You have to try to pretty much raise some of that NIL money and go to people and say, hey, look, Gardner Rush is a great player. Could you sponsor him on this advertisement to make sure we get more income to him? But you're dealing, in the part you're dealing with now, you're dealing with a lot of representatives, a lot of agents, things of that nature. And even with all that, though, you have to, as a coach, build relationships with your athletes. And they have to trust what you're selling. And the teams that are winning, that's the way they do it. Michigan, last night I was watching them in the Final Four, and they had 5 new transfers on that team that won. And those guys, they love their coach. So at the end of the day, even with the money involved with it, the NIL and the rev sharing, there's still this personal side where the coaches have to understand their student athletes and their players and have to like being where they're at.
Well, and if you think about a guy like Jay Johnson in baseball and his ability to develop young players for the next level, which is where all of these kids who come to LSU want to be eventually, right? There's an advantage there. But you think about how successful he's been. We got the best baseball coach in America, won 2 of the last 3 national championships. And so making sure that his program continues to be funded at the level
Correct.
with whatever it gets from rev share, and then whatever we can do from an NIL perspective. That has to be part of what you focus on.
And that's why when I realigned the department, that's what I did. I put Clay Harris, I put him football, and Heath Sawyer, basketball. And I got Zach Greenwell, in baseball, women's basketball. These are important. These are the four. You're going to work closely with TAF and the coach, and we're going to go raise revenue in those sports. And that's where I see it. That's why it has to be, the Big Four has to be successful. And that's why I put an individual combined with TAF to make sure that they have the resources to be successful.
Is that how Verge, a place like LSU, competes with the University of Texas and the University of Michigan and the Texas A&Ms, these schools with these huge endowments and these wealthy donors, right? We're blessed with some pretty good donors on our end, but that's competition going forward is going to be critical.
I think too many people get caught into that about these other schools and these big donors. Yeah, they have big donors, but at the same time, a lot of people are not comfortable with NIL.
Yeah.
And you have to find the right people who want to be involved with that. I mean, I don't care how much money you have. Some of the older guys and older players are just not, I'm not giving a young man, money to come play at the institution. So, but you have to explain to your donors, like, if we want to be successful and we want to win, we have to do some of these things. So it's the right people. All of us right now in the country are having financial issues. Nobody can say, I have a fund balance so big that I'm not worrying about the dollar. I think when I get on that call today with the other ADs and the SEC and the commissioner, everybody's talking about finances, how we could sustain this thing. You can't sustain every year going out there and raising that much money year after year after year from individuals. It just doesn't happen. There's not that many. I don't care if University of Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, all of us, the Big Ten, all of us in that situation. We have to get back to, how we be successful in building these relationships with our student athletes and saying, look, you're going to come here. This is what you're going to get. We're going to develop you into one of the best players. You look at Corey Raymond, the cornerbacks that he get. People want to come here to play for him. Now, there's a lot of guys that probably offered a lot of his players a lot more money. I've seen it happen where a guy said, you know what, that $100,000 more isn't worth it to develop me in the long run in the future. And that's the kind of people you want in your business. Any business you have, if they're there just for the dollar, just for the money, then it's not going to work. And I think Coach Kiffin made that point when you talked earlier about practice. You come to LSU just for the money, and you don't think you're going to work hard because they're working hard out there, you're in the wrong place. So we're going to work hard. We're going to take care of those who, you earn where you are as an athlete. But at the same time, we're going to expect results.
Like any business, particularly the one I'm most familiar with, industry, right? From time to time, they've got to do turnarounds. They've got to do updates. They've got to expand. I don't remember a time in my lifetime of being an LSU athletics fan that there weren't plans for updates. So tell us a little bit about maybe the new arena. Are there plans for Alex Box Stadium renovations? Are we looking at anything at the PMAC? What's going on from a capital project standpoint?
One thing we want to do is get that arena off the ground, and that'll build an interest to our institution. We look at LSU. One thing I did, I visited a lot of schools, and my sons were recruiting visits, probably about 70 schools around the country. And one thing that we want to do at LSU is not only be athletics, but how do we help the institution as a whole when we do things? And that's why this arena project is so big for LSU, because it not only helps us have a new arena, but it brings other things on campus. You talk about the concerts, you talk about shows, you talk about many different things we could bring on campus, but also build a front porch to the institution, which we don't have. Many institutions have a nice area where you drive in, a safe area where the students, the 18, 19, 20-year-old kids go to hang in restaurants and places they can hang and have fun. So, how do we develop that front porch to the institution? We really don't have that. A nice, beautiful area where our students could go, where they're interested in campus. And it helps also generate young people come to the institution. We have 66,000 applications at LSU, and pretty much all SEC schools have similar numbers. But how we grow that, how we grow the institution, and that's all part of it, that construction project. And then you have baseball. We're going to do some things there to make it better. We always look at all of our facilities, how we can improve it. Now, in this day and age with rev share and NIL, you have to also look at that. Is it the facility or is it, what you put into the athletes to get them there, the resources or the coaches. And so you have to weigh. I think we've done very well on a lot of our facilities, new tennis facility, baseball, softball. There's some things we want to do in some of our other smaller sports, but overall we've done pretty good. The PMAC will stay there. But it has to be used for university things like graduations and things of that nature, because a private company, Oakview Group, be running the arena for us, and they'll be out there bringing in concerts and shows and things like that to the building to generate revenue to pay for it.
PMAC will still be important because you want that new arena to stay full, and there are things that the university will have to. It's been a great honor and pleasure to have you here today. Let's wrap up with this. I know maybe athletic directors don't necessarily want to get into this always, but there is great excitement around LSU football, right? We talked about it before we started the taping today about what that Clemson weekend is going to be like to start the season at home. Expectations.
Expectations to me as an old player, and Gordy could tell you this here, is win the first game. And then everybody worrying about the Ole Miss game, the Alabama, the Tennessee. You win the first game, and that's my expectations. And then after that, it's one game at a time. And that's how you have to be. If you're looking ahead, you're going to get beat. And that's how we're going to do it. And I think that's how Coach Kiffin has this team. I go to practice and watch this team. It's a business model. Nobody's standing around. It goes back to, and he says, to the Nick Saban type practices we had, where your third team and your fourth team are just getting many reps as the first team and the second team. It's constant movement. Their conditioning is running to every drill. Their conditioning is running up and down the field in live action, the way they do it. If you hadn't been to a football practice, it's so exciting to see. He has a very good team. And as I say, you could have a great team that you went to the portal and got, but now it's how you put together the chemistry of the team, how the quarterbacks and the receivers, the time and all those different type of things. And after spring practice, now it really starts the off season. How the receivers and the quarterbacks and all of them work together, their timing on everything. Blake Baker, I talked to him, very excited about the defense. And I think it's a physical practice they're having, and it's something that these kids weren't used to. We kind of got away from that, being the LSU of old, attacking on defense, being physical, doing the 9-on-7s, the 3-on-3s, and just being a very physical football team. I think you'll see that. That's what you're going to see is the difference. But like I said, we take it one game at a time. You never look ahead, and you take care of what's in front of you right now.
Well, I know that the coaches and the players and the athletic director might not want to look ahead, but Gordy, I've been going to LSU football games for almost 50 years, or in fact more than 50 years now. And this might be one of the great home schedules in the history of LSU football. If you think about Clemson, Texas, Texas A&M, Alabama, all at home this year. Going to be a good year.
Well, 9 SEC games. It's a great road schedule, too. I mean, obviously Ole Miss, but a chance to go to Kentucky, Tennessee. We haven't been to Auburn in years. Auburn, always a great place to play. So a lot to look forward to. Verge, thanks for joining us. Congrats on your success. Well-deserved, and keep up this heater you're on. Let us know. You got any tips for us? Let us know.
I want to slow it down a little bit.
Okay.
I want to get some of that karma.
Yeah.
Right? That's good stuff.
For Tim Johnson, Verge Ausberry, I'm Gordy Rush. This has been the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.